The day my son ordered me out of his own wedding, I felt something inside me quietly break. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a small, sharp crack, the kind only a mother can hear. I stood there in my pale blue dress, chosen because it was Ethan's favorite color, while the bride glared at me as if I had ruined her moment. And when my son repeated her words, "Mom, maybe you should leave," I realized I was no longer a part of the life I helped build. But what they didn't know was that I carried a truth, one his bride never expected. A truth that would turn her face completely pale. A truth that would make everyone in that hall fall silent. How did I become the outsider at my own son's wedding? What made my gentle boy push me away so easily? And why did the truth I spoke stop the music, the ceremony, and the lies, all at once? Hi, I'm Marianne, and this is my story. People think a wedding brings families closer, but sometimes it reveals the cracks that were already quietly widening. When Ethan told me he was getting married, I felt a warm flutter in my chest, something hopeful, something healing. After losing my husband 3 years ago, I had been moving through life with a quiet kind of emptiness. Ethan's wedding felt like a new beginning, not just for him, but for me too. But almost immediately, something felt off. I wasn't included in the cake tasting, the decor decisions, or even the guest list confirmation. Every time I offered help, Alyssa would smile, too tightly, and say, "We've got it handled." Ethan would nod, distracted, as if agreeing was easier than questioning. It was subtle at first, like a draft sneaking under a closed door. One evening, I asked Ethan about the rehearsal dinner plans. He hesitated, eyes flicking away. "Oh. Alyssa's handling all that." "Don't worry, Mom." But it wasn't the words, it was the tone. Detached. Practiced. Almost rehearsed. I tried to brush it aside. I tried to tell myself this is what happens when children grow up and build new lives. But deep down, a small whisper kept saying something wasn't right. And for the first time, I wondered if the wedding I had dreamed about, me walking proudly beside my son, wasn't the wedding Alyssa wanted at all. The distance had begun. I just didn't realize how far it would go. Alyssa wasn't rude. That would have been too easy to spot. Instead, she was polite in a way that kept me at a distance, as if invisible boundaries surrounded her. She spoke to me the same way people speak to a neighbor they barely know. And what unsettled me most was how Ethan mirrored her energy. My son, who used to call me twice a day, now responded to my messages with short replies. "Busy." Later, Mom. In a meeting. A week passed without him stopping by the house. When I finally called and asked if everything was okay, he sighed, a long, tired sigh I wasn't used to hearing from him. "Mom, please don't overthink things. Alyssa just has a specific way she wants things done." The phrasing stung. Her way. Not their way. One afternoon, Ethan came to pick up a few old childhood things he wanted for the wedding video montage. As he gathered boxes, Alyssa called. I couldn't hear her words, but Ethan's face tightened. His voice softened, appeasing. Yes, I'll handle it." "No, she's fine." And then that quick glance at me, guilty, uncertain. The moment he walked outside to finish the call, the house fell unbearably quiet. My late husband always said, manipulation doesn't announce itself, it slips in like fog. And standing in that silence, I finally understood what he meant. Someone, was slipping between me and my son. The confirmation arrived in the most accidental, painful way, through a conversation I was never meant to hear. I had gone to the bridal boutique to drop off a small heirloom hairpin for Alyssa, something from Ethan's grandmother she had always imagined her grandson's wife wearing. I thought it would be a sweet gesture. As I approached the back room, I recognized Alyssa's voice, sharp, irritated. "I'm not dealing with his mother's emotional stuff. She's already too involved. And honestly, she's a liability." A liability. I froze. The hairpin trembled in my fingers. Another voice, her friend, maybe, asked what she meant. Alyssa scoffed softly. Ethan doesn't see it, but she's clingy. And all that property she has? It's going to cause problems if she starts making demands. We need to set boundaries now. Her property? Causing problems? I stepped back slowly, trying to steady my breath. The hairpin felt suddenly heavy, like I had no right to give it. I left without entering the room. Driving home, my hands shook on the steering wheel. Words like clingy and liability echoed in my mind. I'd never heard anyone speak about me like that, especially not the woman marrying my son. And for the first time, I feared this wasn't just a personality clash. This was intentional exclusion, quiet, calculated, and wrapped in a smile. Alyssa didn't want a mother-in-law. She wanted me out of the picture. My suspicion solidified a week later, when I received a call from the bank manager, Mr. Lawson, a polite, older gentleman who had known me and my late husband for years. Mrs. Cole, he began carefully, we received a request yesterday regarding your primary account. Someone attempted to add themselves as joint authority. My heart thudded. I never submitted such a request. I assumed as much, he replied gently. The documentation was incomplete, so we rejected it. But I felt you should be informed. Joint authority. Someone trying to access my savings. Savings that included the settlement from my husband's pension. I asked if a name was listed. There was a pause. Yes, but I want to emphasize, it may not have been submitted by them personally. Still, he had to tell me. Alyssa Morgan. My chest tightened, anger, fear, disbelief all swirling into something cold and heavy. Why would she want access to my account? Why would she even know where I banked? Mr. Lawson suggested adding extra security measures. I agreed instantly. After the call, I sat on the couch, staring at the framed photo of my late husband. You were right, I whispered. Fog. The kind that slips under the door. The kind that blurs judgment. The kind that quietly erases trust. Alyssa didn't just want distance between me and Ethan. She wanted control. And she had already started reaching for my life, financially. When the wedding planner, Amelia, called to confirm family details for the ceremony, her tone held a quiet hesitation. I sensed she had something on her mind. Mrs. Cole, she said softly, I wanted to check with you about the mother of the groom entrance, since you won't be walking with Ethan. I blinked. I won't be walking with him? A small silence. Then her breath released slowly. Alyssa asked that you be seated before the ceremony begins. She said it would flow better aesthetically. Aesthetic. The word stabbed deeper than intended. And the family photos? I asked. Another pause. I was instructed to remove your name from the main list and put you under the optional grouping, but I felt uncomfortable doing that. So I kept you on the primary list. My throat tightened. I thanked her, forcing my voice to stay steady. When the call ended, I sat silently in my living room, the evening light stretching across the floor, soft and golden, mockingly peaceful. I had envisioned standing beside my son as he married the woman he loved. I had imagined a moment where he looked at me with gratitude, maybe even nostalgia. Instead, Alyssa had pushed me to the edges of the celebration like unwanted decor. The exclusion wasn't accidental. It wasn't oversight. It was a decision. And Ethan, my sweet boy, was letting it happen. The fog was no longer fog. It was a storm. The morning of the wedding, I dressed slowly, choosing the pale blue dress Ethan once said made me look like calm itself. I pinned my hair back with a simple clip, not the heirloom hairpin I once planned to give Alyssa. As I arrived at the venue, the staff smiled politely, directing me to a table near the far corner of the reception hall. Not with family. Not with close relatives. With distant acquaintances. Is this correct? I asked gently. Yes, ma'am, the young woman replied, glancing at her chart. You're at table 17. 17. My hands trembled as I smoothed my dress, trying to remind myself that today wasn't about me. It was Ethan's day. His happiness. But as I watched guests greeting each other warmly, families gathering for photos, bridesmaids laughing together, I felt like I had wandered into the wrong event, an outsider in my son's life. Ethan walked past me at one point, dressed in his suit, looking handsome and nervous. For a second, I thought he might reach for me, hug me, anything. Instead, he gave a tight smile. "Mom, glad you made it." "Glad I made it. To my own son's wedding." Before I could say more, Alyssa appeared beside him, slipping her hand into his arm. Her eyes swept over me briefly, cool, dismissive, and then she steered him away. I stood there, swallowing the ache forming in my chest. The music started. Guests began finding their seats. And I realized I had been invited just enough to be polite. Not enough to belong. The confrontation came swiftly, almost brutally disguised as concern. I had stepped toward the main aisle, wanting to take a closer photo before the ceremony began. Nothing dramatic. Just a mother trying to freeze a moment. But Alyssa's mother approached first, lips tight. "This area is for immediate family and bridal party only." I blinked. "I am immediate family." Before she could respond, Alyssa appeared, frustration already simmering beneath her carefully arranged expression. "Marianne, please don't start making a scene today." A scene. The word struck like a slap. "I was just taking a photo," I said quietly. She crossed her arms. "I told you we had certain boundaries for the ceremony. You're making things difficult." Before I could breathe, Ethan joined us, looking tense, torn. "Alyssa, what's going on?" he asked. "She's stressing everyone out," Alyssa said quickly. "Your mom is ignoring the seating plan and causing confusion." My mouth opened slightly. "Ethan, that's not." Alyssa cut me off. "We can't deal with extra complications today." Then she turned to Ethan, lowering her voice but not enough. "Please handle this." Handle. As if I were a problem to be managed. Ethan rubbed his forehead, eyes clouded. "Mom, maybe it's better if you step outside for a bit. Just until things settle. Please." My heart cracked, not in anger, but in the deepest kind of grief. My son, my child, asking me to leave. Guests had turned. Silence rippled. A few whispered. I swallowed the sting. I nodded. And with every step I took toward the exit, I felt pieces of my heart falling quietly behind me. Outside the venue, the air felt heavier than the moment deserved. I stood near a row of decorative lanterns, hands shaking, breath shallow. The humiliation lingered like a bruise forming beneath the skin, deep, invisible, painful. For a moment, I considered simply going home. Ending the day quietly, in my empty living room, where no one could see the ache in my eyes. But then I thought of my husband, Ethan's father, the man who had loved fiercely, protected gently, and planned carefully. He had always said, truth comes when it's needed most, not when it's convenient. And suddenly, I understood. Alyssa's manipulating. Ethan blindly following. The attempted bank access. The exclusion from the wedding. The public humiliation. This wasn't random behavior. It was a pattern. And the truth I had kept quiet for years, because I wanted peace, because I wanted Ethan to decide his own life, was the very truth that could break this pattern. I wiped my tears, steadied myself, and walked back inside, not to reclaim a seat, not to demand an apology, but to speak what needed to be spoken. When I returned to the edge of the hall, guests turned again. Alyssa's face tightened. Ethan stepped toward me, confusion etched in his features. "Mom, I asked you." I raised my hand gently. "Ethan, before your life changes today, there's something you both need to hear." A hush fell. Alyssa's confident posture faltered. And for the first time that day, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. The hall stilled as I stepped forward. My voice didn't rise. It didn't tremble. It simply carried the weight of years, of love, of loss, of truth. When your father was sick, I began softly, he put everything he had into ensuring you would be protected, Ethan. Not just financially, but emotionally. He wanted you to build your life with people who valued trust and respect. I saw Ethan's eyes soften, confusion slowly melting into worry. Before he passed, I continued, he updated his will. The house, the land, the savings, everything was placed under one condition. Alyssa's expression shifted, curiosity, annoyance, then a flash of something else. The condition, I said, was that I remain financially independent and free of coercion. If anyone tries to gain access to my accounts, if anyone attempts to pressure me, if anyone tries to manipulate my decisions. I paused, letting the words settle. The entire inheritance bypasses the family and transfers to the charitable trust he created. A gasp moved through the guests. Alyssa's face drained. I looked directly at her, not accusingly, but steadily. Yesterday, someone attempted to add themselves to my bank account. The request was rejected, but documented. Alyssa stepped back, her breath catching. Ethan turned to her sharply. What? Alyssa, what is she talking about? She stuttered, I didn't, this is being blown out of proportion. But the damage was done. The truth stood bare. And the lies around it began to collapse. I exhaled quietly. I hadn't come to destroy anything. I had simply spoken the truth. The silence that followed felt heavier than any accusation. Guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Ethan and Alyssa, between me and the space where trust had just shattered. Ethan looked at Alyssa as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Did you try to access my mother's account? He asked quietly. She laughed nervously. Ethan, no, this is ridiculous. Your mother is twisting things. I didn't react. I didn't need to. Because Mr. Lawson had already emailed me the attempted access notice that morning. I gently pulled my phone from my purse. I didn't want to bring this out today. But since I've already been asked to leave. I held the phone toward Ethan. His face went rigid as he read. The hall felt airless. Alyssa reached for him. Ethan, listen, I only wanted to help organize things. He stepped back. A single tear rolled down my cheek, not from victory, but from the grief of watching the truth tear through the illusion my son had believed in. I whispered, I'm not here to fight, Ethan. I'm here because you deserve to know what's happening around you. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, voice barely audible. Mom. I am so sorry. I shook my head gently. This is your day. I won't take it from you. I turned, walking away, not out of defeat, but out of dignity. And in that moment, the hall felt smaller than ever, too small to contain the truth that had finally surfaced. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I sat quietly on a bench outside the venue, listening to the distant music, imagining the wedding proceeding without me. The ache was deep, but not chaotic. More like a wound that finally stopped bleeding. After nearly an hour, footsteps approached. I didn't need to look up. I knew Ethan's gait anywhere. He sat beside me silently. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, she told me you were becoming unstable, forgetful, emotional. A slow exhale left my lungs. She said you were trying to control the wedding. That you were hiding things from me. He looked down at his hands. I believed her. I swallowed softly. Love can make us trust the wrong people. It doesn't make you a bad son. His voice cracked. I asked you to leave. I placed my hand over his. You reacted to what you were told. Manipulation works best when it feels like care. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Mom, thank you for telling me the truth. I wish I had seen it sooner. I smiled faintly. You saw it when it mattered. He hesitated. The wedding, it's paused. People are confused. Alyssa is furious. I didn't respond. It wasn't my place. But I need time, he continued. To think. To understand everything. And, to apologize properly. The wind rustled the trees around us, gentle and forgiving. For the first time in weeks, I felt my heart unclench. Maybe not everything was lost. But everything was changing. Ethan came to my house the next morning, eyes swollen from lack of sleep. He carried 2 cups of coffee, the way he used to when we talked late into the evenings. We sat at the kitchen table, sunlight warming the wooden surface between us. Mom, he began, I want to make things right. But I don't even know where to start. I looked at him carefully. He still seemed so much like the boy who once came to me with scraped knees and tangled emotions. Start, I said gently, by learning to question what doesn't feel right, even when it comes from someone you love. He nodded slowly. I let her isolate me. I didn't see it happening. That's how isolation works, I replied softly. Quietly. Gradually. He hesitated before speaking again. I might have rushed into this marriage. Maybe for the wrong reasons. I didn't push. A mother's wisdom knows when silence speaks more truth than advice. Instead, I handed him a folder, documents, account details, the security measures now in place. I'm protecting myself, Ethan, I said gently. Not from you. But from any situation like this happening again. He swallowed. I understand. And I want you to protect everything Dad left you. Everything you earned. Tears welled unexpectedly in my eyes. Not from pain this time, but from the quiet, fragile return of trust. I love you, he whispered. I know, I said. And that's why we'll be okay. We didn't solve everything that morning. But we built something stronger. Boundaries. Understanding. Respect. And sometimes, that's the beginning of healing. In the weeks that followed, life slowed into something gentler. I spent more time tending to my small garden, letting the quiet steadiness of nature hold me. I started volunteering at the community center twice a week, helping seniors with paperwork, sharing cups of tea, listening to stories. It reminded me that life doesn't end with pain, it simply shifts into new forms. Ethan visited often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just for company. Our conversations grew softer, deeper, more honest. He didn't mention Alyssa much, except to say they were taking time apart. I didn't ask for details. Healing isn't helped by pulling at the stitches. One evening, while we drank tea on the porch, Ethan said quietly, I'm learning the difference between love and dependency. Between trust and blindness. I nodded, proud of him not just as a son, but as a man growing into clarity. My home began to feel safe again, not because someone was kept out, but because I had reclaimed my place within it. There was a new strength in me. Not loud. Not vengeful. Just steady. For the first time in years, I felt like myself, not a widow, not a mother trying to hold on, but a woman rediscovering her own life. And that was enough. The day Ethan came to see me with calm resolution in his eyes, I knew he had reached his own truth. He didn't come for advice. He came with clarity. Mom, he murmured, I've decided to call off the wedding. Not out of anger. Out of understanding. I touched his hand gently. That decision is yours alone. And I'm proud of you for taking the time to find it. He exhaled deeply, a release of months of tension. I'm sorry for everything I put you through. I smiled, a soft, forgiving smile. Pain teaches us. But dignity carries us. He rested his head briefly on my shoulder, like he used to when he was young. And in that moment, the years between us softened. The hurt dissolved. What remained was love, quiet, imperfect, enduring. Later that evening, as I stood by my window watching the sunset, I realized something. My victory wasn't that the truth had come out. It wasn't that the inheritance was protected. It wasn't even that Ethan returned to me with honesty. My true victory was that I never lost myself. Not to fear. Not to manipulation. Not to humiliation. I chose dignity over war. Truth over silence. Strength over despair. And in the quiet of that fading light, I whispered to myself. No love is worth your dignity. No relationship worth your erasure. And no betrayal strong enough to break a woman who knows her own worth. My name is Marianne. And this is how I reclaimed my peace.